Our next threat, human threat to biodiversity, is the I. So we talked about habitat destruction being the H. The I is going to stand for invasive species. These are species that were brought in, that were not naturally found in a location. And we have some examples locally. I remember as a little kid, I loved to catch ladybugs. And when I moved up to this area, some years ago, I found that if you picked up these little ladybugs, they'll bite you. And they're not the ladybugs that I used to catch as a kid. These darn things bite. And it ends up, this is one from Asia that somehow got brought over here. Other larger, well, I mean, I'd say it's displacing the nice ladybug that would naturally have been found here. There are some other more sinister threats to biodiversity, human threats to biodiversity. There are a number of different mosquitoes that have come to America, and it usually it's in some kind of water situation. I know that somehow in shipping, and ships come up to the Great Lakes, and these species get inadvertently brought. And there's the tiger mosquito. It's a very aggressive kind of a mosquito that came, I guess, from Africa. Yeah, and it carries a really deadly brain infection called West Nile virus. And I remember a few years ago when I was teaching this same class in the spring, they were talking about the first case in America of the West Nile virus, and they were saying, yeah, it had been diagnosed in Squirrel Hill, Pittsburgh, and it's a really bad. It causes brain damage and can kill you. So it's a very dangerous condition, and it was brought over by an invasive species of mosquito. We have, again, from shipping, what happened is we got a mussel. It's just a little, like, clam that got brought over, but it's having a tremendous negative effect on the Great Lakes. It's called the zebra mussel, and it's so effective at filtering out food, and it doesn't have... Here's the problem. I didn't mention this. Why are these invasive species so successful? At certain times of the year, you'll have like hundreds of ladybugs, and we have massive amounts of zebra mussels. And it's because they've moved to a place where they don't have a co-evolved predator. And so they come into an area where, there hasn't been a history to establish something to eat it, and so they're very successful, and so they have a really dramatic effect on the landscape. So we have zebra mussels, Asiatic ladybugs, these mosquitoes. I'm from the South originally, and there's a type of a vine. It's called kudzu, and it was brought over as a soil control type of plant. Well, it doesn't control the soil, and so I don't know why it was brought over. It was brought over from China, but Americans brought it over intentionally to help hold the soil. It doesn't do that. It just grows up over the trees, over the telephone poles, over buildings, everywhere. It's covering the South. So this is another example of an invasive species that is displacing other species. That's a threat to biodiversity. Invasive meaning it's brought by humans.